Have you ever felt that you don't really want to play despite the tons of games in your game library? Or maybe you're like me, you love to play and watch YouTube videos or listen to podcasts at the same time while not entirely focusing on the game. Well, let's talk about it. Lately I've been playing games that are ideal for the latter scenario, games that can easily be paused and can be played in small bites. If I feel I only want to focus on them, they will certainly make me use my brain cells. But if I want to let myself be distracted by watching a video on how to melt steel beams with jet fuel, or some hermitcraft, I can give it into YouTube without having to face any serious problems in the game. So let's jump right into the middle of the minimalistic puzzle games I brought that can help you combat these first world problems. Dorfromantik, or Village Romance for the non-German speakers, is a peaceful building strategy and puzzle game where you create a beautiful ever-growing village landscape by placing tiles. When one thinks of villages, it might trigger completely different associations. Some may picture tractors and boredom, others might envision a lifestyle that attracts with its presumed idyll, or one filled to the brim with delicious country flavors. Players can now at least digitally build a village scene with Carcassonne-like puzzle elements. First thing first, I would like to give credit to the 4-person team for making this rather minimalistic Zen-like game, and that they innovated this board game-like genre in a way that is equally fun and equally interesting to discover. At its core, Dorfromantik plays a lot like the board game Carcassonne that has already been digitized a million times. But while Carcassonne is all about humiliating your family members and friends with the ultimate castle build, Dorfromantik approaches from a different angle. It uses the same incentive that are as old as gaming: scoring. At the beginning of the game, the landscape consists of only one field with 6 possible cultivation areas. But on the right hand side, the randomly created stack of further hexagonal parts already awaits. Plains, forests, fields, villages, rail tracks, rivers, lakes and all sorts of mixed forms are hidden in it. At any point, you only see the upcoming 3 tiles, so you have to place them to earn your points and rotate them to maximize your potential. Because for every tile placed, you get points, therefore, how you place these hexagons is relevant. While playing, you feel like you have to create the most beautiful village landscape possible. I wanted to make great fields, enormous forests, small tucked away villages, which the game also allowed me to do, but soon I learned the importance of rotating the parts and laying them in advance. At regular intervals, you'll also receive side objectives, for example, have a certain number of railways or 40 fields, and since these build one another, you will have to pay attention to your placement, as mistakes are costly. So there's certainly room for mistakes. Completing special landscapes too early, halting their growth, or placing a river in the way of your forest expansion. Or maybe you just couldn't finish one of your special tasks. Since the only way to replenish your tiles is to finish your tasks eventually, they will be the main driving points. But luckily the game lets you breathe and doesn't overwhelm you with numerous quests. The graphics are nice, the colors are pretty, and these all add to the countryside feeling. You can clearly see how the different biomes lean into one another. You can notice small boats or deer moving around. It is certainly a very calming aesthetic. All in all, it is a great, relaxing game that can ease your mind. You will definitely have the capacity to watch your favorite TV show in the background, or you can just enjoy the romantic village you create. As a final note, I have to mention how addictive Dorfromantik is. The girlfriend and I are involved in a dramatic race for the high score, and annoyingly enough, I must admit, she's proving to be quite a challenge. Has it ever happened to you, perhaps while visiting one of the great European capitals, to take a look at the map with all the routes of the city subway? That tangle of lines, whose task is to guide tourists and commuters to their destination. A somewhat magnetic pattern with an immediately noticeable cultural weight. Well, in addition to having inspired unusual work of contemporary art, a video game has now even been released from the tangle of subway lines. The guys of Dinosaur Polo Club were inspired by this concept to give life to an authentic gem called Minimetro. But what is Minimetro specifically? It is a brilliant concentrate of strategy and simulation, which will challenge us to design simply by drawing lines with the mouse a subway network capable of satisfying the increasingly pressing needs of a constantly growing city. The aim of the game, as mentioned, is to create various lines of underground network, trying to avoid the overcrowding of stations that will gradually emerge autonomously on the territory. But be careful, behind what at first appears to be an easy to interpret strategic title, there are complex game dynamics which will force us to intervene with logic and timeliness in order not to run into a sudden game over. To build our subway, we will have a ton of prestigious metropolises at our disposal, among which we mention New York, London, Melbourne, Osaka, Hong Kong, St. Petersburg, and even Hungary, whose geographical complexities, to meet the minimalism that animates the entire production, they have been simplified and redesigned while still trying to preserve the important characteristics of the real counterparts. In practice, what is preserved in the skeletal game maps are the waterways, the bays, and any floating isles around the cities. The choice of the city will also determine some small variations of gameplay. In Hong Kong, for example, new subway stations will rise at a more frenetic pace than normal. In Melbourne, having only slow trams available, the demand of the population will be significantly lower, as well as the rate of growth of the same. In Osaka, on the other hand, we will be able to place high-speed trains, really perfect for quickly traveling the longest subway lines. In short, each city will have its own particular way of diversifying the gameplay. Once a scenario has been selected, we will be immediately taken to the game map, where the first 3 stations of our subway will be waiting for us, each of which will be identified by a different geometric symbol. To put them into operation, just connect them by drawing a line with the mouse, which once drawn, and assume the color that identifies it, will be immediately crossed by one of the locomotives in our possession. At this point, with the network finally active, the first commuters will begin to flock to each station, also represented by small geometric symbols, which will represent a station to be reached. Whenever we create a new line or extend the existing ones to reach one of the new stations that will pop up in the area, we will have to make sure to vary the stops included in the single line of network as much as possible, so as not to create any unnecessary overcrowding on the trains or on the docks. This will basically the most important rule to follow for the entire duration of the game, since whenever more than 10 commuters crowd into a single station, a countdown will immediately start, which will, once finished, will declare the game over. To save ourselves, we will be able to intervene with many small targeted actions, each able to improve the efficiency of our network in its own way. We will be able to modify the existing routes, pass several lines from the same station, so as to divide the passengers on several trains, move locomotives between the various lines, add new locomotives or carriages, place switches to allow more than 10 commuters to stop in a single station, all by dragging each element with a simple drag and drop. At the end of the game, in addition to being able to view the game statistics and a short time-lapse of the growth of our network, we will be assigned a score, which will be immediately inserted in the leaderboard Steam officials, so you can compare it with friends or globally. Furthermore, for those who intend to enjoy the experience offered by Minimetro without the headaches caused by the overcrowding of these stations, the developers have introduced the so-called Endless mode, in which it will be possible to play each map without running into the game over from overcrowding, focusing only on the efficiency of our network. Similarly, for those who want a higher degree of challenge than that offered by the Classic mode, it will be possible to face each map in Extreme mode, where it will not be allowed in any way to modify the routes already made. And now let's take a look at the next one in line, Motorways. It may seem almost silly to try to follow up on the previously mentioned Minimetro with a very similar project and want to overcome it. However, the developers from Dinosaur Polo Club were not afraid of that. They returned to the drawing boards and came up with a sequel, Motorways, where underground trains are replaced by cars driving instead of tunnels through the winding streets of the cities. Yes, it may seem silly. It seemed silly to me too, but I was completely wrong, because the authors really did it. They raised their own bar and created a minimalist masterpiece. So, let's jump right into it. The concept remains more or less unchanged. Suddenly, 2 buildings grow on a green field, one of which wants something one by one. But while in Minimetro you had to transport passengers from one station to another using simple patterns, in Motorways the game is played purely in color. The game won't tell you directly, but you're emotionally watching a perverted company that is interested in nothing but shopping. As soon as a new building appears, it immediately starts to create some kind of bubbles, probably equals all the goods the households want, so you have to help the people getting those bubbles. Otherwise the warehouses will be overcrowded and the whole city will collapse in this perverted reality. It is a very flimsy cohabitation that works great for a while. First you will see a white mall and soon a white house with a garage hiding 2 cars. All you have to do is to connect the house with the mall on an arbitrarily twisted path, and soon as the first goods appear, one car immediately and automatically sets off. This is the beginning of his destiny. Until the end of the whole city he will go back and forth like crazy and fulfill the most important task, to delay your loss and shopping. Motorways is not a game you can finish or win. You always lose. It's just a matter of when that happens. Each individual purchase taken represents 1 point of score, which is the only thing that is explicitly played here. You trump yourself, compete with other players in online leaderboards, and daily and weekly challenges. The fact that your city must stand once and for all makes Motorways feel like a card castle. You know from the beginning that you will create something amazing, breathtaking and very complex, which you will have to tear down and lose after all the effort. And you will be happy about it. It's just about that, and it's something that can bring peace to the soul. Playing this game is a zen experience, which in addition to the idea I've described before, is also supported by the gameplay and the audiovisual processing itself. The color contrasts in several different palettes together with the intricate paths and their curves, roundabouts, bridges, tunnels and of course the tidal highways together form a colorful picture that is a joy to look at in every single moment of his life. Gracefully drawing numerically limited roads and coming up with an ideal solution to a complicated traffic situation on the go or during a post-game is never stressful due to the fact that you can erase the entire infrastructure in 2 or 3 seconds and create a whole new, more functional mess of streets. But sooner or later the algorithm that creates random malls and houses will create a situation where you can't avoid blending colors. The greens and the violets suddenly have to share the same path, they slow down each other, they arrive in the mall with a delay, so the warehouses are filled and the hustle and bustle begins. With such situations mentioned, special segments such as roundabouts and motorways will help you, but you only get them once a week, in addition to 2 randomly selected ones, of which you can keep only one together with another batch of roads. You never have enough of everything. So you keep thinking about new routes and better intersections so that everyone gets in time for their dream goods. The zooming out on the static camera is so lazy that you usually don't realize it at all, and if you happen to notice it, you will always be surprised by the paths you have taken in that very moment. This is only further completes the zen atmosphere. If the creators gave you control over the movement and the zoom of the camera, Motorways would lose much of its magic. Fortunately, they didn't. Overall, it's a brilliant, minimalist, but bigger, more sophisticated, prettier and more specific game than Minimetro was. So in short, Motorways far outgrown the shadow of its already excellent predecessor. Islanders is a minimalistic strategy game about building cities on colorful islands. The core concept is so simple that it only takes 2 minutes to understand what you have to do. Each level is a small island on which you have to build settlements and place buildings for points until you reach the required amount to move on to the next island, where you then start over from scratch. The basis is as simple as that, but this does not mean that we are faced with a trivial game, neither design-wise nor looking at the experience offered fortunately. The key to everything lies in the way in which the score is calculated, and the interaction between the available buildings, just like in the aforementioned Dorfromantik. Each building provides additional points if placed near specific buildings, while being penalized by others. The trivial example is that of the sawmill, which earns points for each carpenter in the vicinity, but loses points if it's too close to the areas of competence of other sawmills. This is a very clear, very simplistic yet very enjoyable set of rules. You have to pay attention to where you expand your city, where you place your industry, and how to add the commercial area to your little island while trying not to break the synergies of the other zones and buildings. Things get interesting when you progress to the advanced stages of each level and buildings with more fun rule sets are unlocked. The circus, for example, offers most if placed near common households, but far from the mansions of the rich. Perhaps because it offers a spectacle more suited to the poor than to the nobility. I don't know. The shaman hut, on the other hand, should be placed far from any residential center and preferably in the middle of the nature. These dynamics can catch you off guard the first time you encounter them because the buildings are already placed that could prevent good combinations, but they stimulate a reasoned planning from the first minute when starting on a new island. The score is the focal point of this game as well. The number of constructions available to us is limited to a few units at a time, with which we must achieve a certain number of points. If we succeed, we are rewarded with other buildings and we can continue until we reach the threshold necessary to complete the level, otherwise we will have to start from the beginning. It might seem a very boring system, but don't let the looks fool you. Each island is randomly generated, hence it will present a new set of challenges and a new set of random buildings that will suit the type of island. It is therefore advisable to adapt one's strategy according to the characteristics of each island, which prevents us from falling into a building routine that always follows the same steps. In part, it is a matter of making rather trivial considerations, such as not focusing on agriculture on desert islands. But other times I have been pleasantly perplexed, like when I have faced a huge mountain with very little place to effectively place buildings, but the game gave me platforms I could utilize, so I could build on the side of the mountain. The artistic style in fact in line with the design principles of the developers, presenting maps with stylized minimalistic graphics accompanied by relaxing music that doesn't want to intrude too much, almost as if we were in a meditation session. The rhythm of the game, divided as it is in small blocks of buildings to be placed, immediately reveals its modular nature, suitable for games of 10 minutes at a time, but at the same time does not exclude longer sessions. While the first islands are completed in few minutes, the increasing size of the following ones require more time to reach the required score. All in all, this game is a uniquely designed city builder that offers a relaxed experience, even if you have only 10 minutes to spare. So let's talk about the last game, Townscaper. I first discovered Townscaper last year while looking through what Steam has to offer. At first glance I love what I have seen, but it was in early access, so I wishlisted it until release. And now it is officially out, so let's talk about it. Usually we introduce games to you, but Townscaper isn't one, at least not according to my standards. From my point of view, a video game is an interactive digital product that performs the task of entertaining the user. The how changes enormously according to the genre and the sensitivity of the creator, but it also changes according to the way the player approaches the product. In the case of Townscaper, what matters is how you approach it. For some it will be a waste of time, for others a small surprise from which will be difficult to break away from many hours. At first glance there isn't much to Townscaper, and I mean it quite literally, just a wide open ocean and a color palette off to the left side. But clicking on one of the colors enables the player to start building their mini-metropolis, adding color-coordinated buildings at a time. You start with the concrete support that will function as streets and squares, then you can click on it one more time to add houses and floors and roofs. Townscaper offers a fairly limited horizontal space, but allows you to climb to unrealistic heights. The rest is up to you. You can aim to create a classic seaside village, a small town built as if it were around the hill, or a series of isles. Townscaper initially could obsess the user and push him to play for even an hour, but once the initial impact is over, it is likely to become a pastime game to fill an empty half an hour or so. Overall, Townscaper is a product that draws its strengths from self-imposed limits. It should be approached as a relaxation tool, in my opinion, and not as a game to be dominated. If you get into the right mindset, you will have a small but pleasant city builder on your hands. So we have reached the end of the video. Hope you have liked what you have seen and enjoyed this mashup. If you have liked one of the games and you might want to purchase it, links are down in the description. If you want to see more videos like this, please give it a like as it helps us immensely. And if you want to join us in the next one, why not subscribe to us? Again, thank you very much for your kind attention and see you in the next video. Escape Pod out.